Hello, welcome to this DCS A-10C II tutorial. In this video, we're going to be covering air-to-air engagements utilizing both your guns and your Sidewinder air-to-air missiles. So to begin, you can put Sidewinders on pylons 11 and 1. If you put Sidewinders on 1, you will no longer be able to have a jammer pod. Personally, I prefer if I'm going into an area where I might be jumped by enemy fighters or helicopters, I'll just completely forego my jammer pod, and I'll have the extra sidewinders just to be able to use. You have several different types of ammo available to you. You'll generally just have your combat mix, as you'll be able to use that for air to ground as well. So that's what I'll have it at for today. Whenever you choose your sidewinders on either 11, 1, or both, you choose air-to-air missiles, and then the AIM-9M sidewinders. The Ls are an older generation, and you don't want to use those. We want to use the Ms. After you do your rearming, always remember to go to your load page, and then load all. I've already done that, so you can see them on my Dismas here. I have already set a mark point to fly over to some aerial targets. Down over here. Back where we were during one of the previous example videos. So we'll go practice on some enemy World War II fighters. Alright, let's get up in the air, and then I can start talking about the actual uses of the munitions. Now to begin, whenever you arm your plane and you throw on your master arm switch, it will mess up your trim. So here, I'll demonstrate, I'll trim out while I'm safe. That looks close enough, so my velocity vector is holding there. And now if I arm my plane, it's going to try and pitch my nose down because it's anticipating me wanting to go down to engage ground targets. So after you arm your plane, you're going to have to trim out again. Once you're armed, in this configuration, I don't have any munitions other than my cannons. So it's going to show me a CCIP invalid because it's anticipating me wanting to use my cannons. In the lower left, we can see what weapon I have selected. In this case, my guns with a combat mix represented by the CM and 1,150 rounds of that cannon. This is an air-to-ground configuration, which we'll cover more in a later video. For here, we're focused on air-to-air. So in order to get into air-to-air mode, we want autopilot. There we go. To get into an air-to-air mode, we're going to use the master mode control button. And this is going to be useful for changing between CCIP, CCRP, weapon safe, nav, and your air-to-air modes. This is a very important button, and we'll cover its uses in more detail in a later video. But for now, in order to get into air-to-ground mode, or air-to-air mode, we're going to press and hold the master mode control button. And now after pressing and holding it, you see we're now in air-to-air. Air-to-air popped up. And it has automatically selected our AIM-9s, which are now the currently selected pylon is shown in white. A pylon we have available but not selected is in a solid green. And the currently selected pylon is now cooled. These missiles are cooled since they're IR missiles. And we're going to look to get a heat source lock on an enemy aircraft. When we have our Sidewinder selected, you will see on our HUD this circle right up here. This circle represents where the heat seeker of the missile is looking. So if I put this over a heat source, we'll hear a tone in the plane, and all I need to do is then bump my cursor controller so it moves slightly, and then it will lock the target. This is using a fixed bore sight mode. It is fixed to the bore sight straight off our plane. If we wanted to be able to move it around, I can move my cursor controller, and I can move the circle around for where the seeker head is looking for a heat source. If I move it and then let go, it's going to start wandering around and looking for a target in the area, and I can just control it again and move it back where I need to. So I can see a speck out there for some aerial fighters, and I'll go ahead and just keep it over the potential target until I have a tone change. If I wanted to get it back to bore sight mode, I can just press aft on my TMS target management switch, and it will reset itself back to the center. This is useful, so if it ends up going off your HUD and it starts to blink, it means you can no longer see where it's looking on your HUD, it's actually somewhere out here. You can press TMS aft and it brings it back to center. Alright, so there's some targets down there. I'll move my cursor over it. And it's not sensing anything. When it does, we'll hear a tone and it will affix the circle to the heat source. These sidewinders, because your plane does not have an air-to-air radar, it's all shot by feel. And you generally only want to fire these within a mile or two at the most, because they can be pretty easily defeated with the slow speeds you're going and the older nature of the missiles. So we're still pretty far from those guys. We're about 5 miles away. You can hear very faint growling in the background. That's showing you that the missile does not have a heat source locked. And hopefully if I get closer, I'll be able to get a tone. Alright, that high-pitched tone, that means it has a lock. So I'll go ahead, reset it with TMS aft, turn back around, and demonstrate that again. Remember to ride the tone if you're doing tight turns. Alright, I'll move my cursor over target. It has the loud solid tone, and my circle is now affixed to the target. Alright, I'll reset it again, and this time I'll fire on the target. I'll do that by pressing my weapon's release button. So I'll move the circle over the target, wait for the solid loud tone, the high-pitched solid tone. Alright, I have the tone, weapon release button. And now the Sidewinder will snake its way over to the target. I have to get pretty close to these warbirds because they're not huge heat signatures. You'll be able to get a better heat signature lock on a fighter, but this serves nicely for this example. Keep in mind that you need to fire these relatively close. If you fire these further out, they'll be much easier to defeat. I'll do that one more time. Want to make sure this guy won't shoot me down. Generally, you're not going to be getting into an air-to-air engagement while you're in an A-10. You'll have fighter cover. But if you ever get jumped and you need to defend yourself, you can utilize these strategies. Alright, lock, fire. Alright, I'm going to get some distance, fly out, and then I'll talk about the guns now. So, on your HUD, you will see this small cross right here in the middle of the circle, and you will see man fixed instead of the CM I talked about earlier down here. This is saying we have a manual fixed gun cross for our cannon for air-to-air, right at that cross. And if I pull the trigger, my air-to-air weapons will fire in the general direction of that cross. There's no calculation done for bullet drop, lead, or anything like that. If I want to change that, I can press DMS right, data management switch right, and it will change to man rotary, RTY. And if I press DMS right again, it will change to A10. And we now have a gun funnel on our HUD. The way this gun funnel works is we will put the wings of the aircraft we are trying to fire on within the funnel. So one end of the left wing is touching this end of the funnel, the left end, and the right end of the wing will be touching the right end of the funnel. This helps us calculate for lead and ballistics of the aircraft we're trying to fire on. And if I press DMS, data management switch right again, it will change to F15, SE25, AH64, and then back to man fixed. So when we're in A10, this gun funnel is calibrated here and here as the wingspan of an A10, and that's true for all of the others. So the wingspan of an F15, it changes, the wingspan of an SU25, and so on. I'll put that back to A10. I'll generally leave it in A10. You just have to keep in mind in your head the wingspan of your enemy aircraft in relation to your wingspan, because that is what this is now calibrated to. So I'll go ahead and try and pull onto an enemy aircraft and demonstrate that. Since they have a much smaller wingspan than my aircraft, I would end up putting their wings somewhere before the end of that gun funnel. If they were further away, I could use the lower portion of the gun funnel, but you just want to have their wing tips touching the ends of the funnel. Alrighty, let's see if I can't get close enough and demonstrate that here. Once again, it shows you the amount of rounds you have remaining in your cannon down here. I don't want to get too low because we do have a AAA emplacement down there, so I need to keep that in mind. As you can see, this is not a fast mover, and utilizing the air-to-air mode is more of a defense tactic rather than an offense tactic. If you're fighting against an enemy fighter, you're going to have a bad day. Alright, let's see if I can't get this wingspan on my gun funnel. Don't want to run into them or get too close. I want to demonstrate it at a distance. Alright, so I'll try and put his wingtips on the funnel. Ride the tone. And you can see how the funnel's moving to calculate for how the bullets are going to travel with you turning and moving all around. So I want to try to keep his wingtips kind of like that and touching the ends of the funnel, and it will help my shots be a little bit more accurate. If I'm directly behind him, I can just use that cross in the center we talked about earlier, the fixed cross. But as you can see, it's not the easiest thing to utilize this gun in an air-to-air sense. That's why we have our sidewinders. Alright, scored some hits on him, he was smoking. And there he goes. So as you can see, I would keep his wings on the tips of this gun funnel. One wing, and then it'll help you be a little bit more accurate rather than just trying to lead the shots in your head with the cross. Just keep in mind the gun funnel itself is calibrated for a wingspan that you'll see down here, so you can always change that for whatever you're fighting. I just like to use it for my A-10 because then I have a reference of the wingspan here, and I can tell if things are larger or smaller and adjust accordingly. To get out of the air-to-air mode, I'll just click my master mode control button, and it'll put me back into a regular air-to-ground mode. We'll cover more of what the master mode control button does in air-to-ground modes in a future video, but you can always get back into your air-to-air just by pressing and holding your master mode control button, and you see the air-to-air pop up. So I click it once, I'm out of air-to-air, I press and hold it, and I'm back in air-to-air. We can tell because we have our sidewinder circle up here at the top. Alright, that covers all of the basics for air-to-air. Just remember, it's not an air-to-air focused aircraft. It's mainly used for defensive purposes. Keep that in mind and you'll do okay. Thanks for watching.